Welcome back to the Blink Weekly Newsletter. I'm Bianca Lager, here with your one-on-ones with me, Bianca Lager. I help leaders navigate through tricky career combos and business moves. So our question of the week came in, and we have here, hi Bianca, my company is going through a significant restructuring, and there's a lot of uncertainty among the employees. How can I support my team through this change and help them stay focused and productive? Well, wonderful to see a leader out here being concerned about your team's well-being and, of course, wanting to develop your own leadership qualities and abilities. And this is a great situation for you to really rise to the occasion. So well done. Love to see a non-toxic workplace question come through. We get so few of them these days. But anyway, yeah, this is a very familiar thing to a lot of folks, certainly familiar to me. I have had to carry my team and my company through really difficult changes, layoffs, and things that were really hard to stomach, really hard to watch happen, and really hard to make the decision for. So I'm going to kind of take two lenses here. My initial thought was in thinking about this from somebody who is in that room, creating that strategy decision, knowing that there's going to be consequences to the employees, essentially thinking about this if you are, call it in the C-suite or really in a part of a strategic team that is making these reorg changes decisions. Because it really essentially starts coming down to how you help your team put these decisions into context. Now, when companies make decisions, especially like a restructure, there's a lot of voices that come into the conversation. A lot of things are being weighed. And know that whoever you are, whatever your position in the company, the downsides, the consequences, the risks, the stuff that basically sucks about it, those are things that are generally anticipated. Who's going to lose their job? Who's going to be unhappy? Customers are going to complain. There's all sorts of kind of negative consequences when you make changes, depending on what the change is, that strategic decision making has considered. And so, I mean, I certainly remember early in my career being at companies and being like, what are these idiots doing? Didn't they know people aren't going to like this? Yeah. What I've learned later is they knew. A lot of times they knew. Sometimes there's some unexpected, reactions that you don't know. But generally speaking, when you are executing a major change or making decisions that are going to affect a variety of groups and certainly some really quite negatively, then it's generally anticipated and it is accepted as part of the situation. And the reason those things are accepted, and getting to the point of answering your question of like how to help your team through this, the reason those things are accepted is that the alternatives were worse. The alternatives were worse for more people or for the company, for whatever the reason. The roads not taken were far more undesirable. So if you are somebody who's been involved in this strategic decision making, these things don't happen overnight. There's a lot of debate and back and forth over all sorts of things. And you're not going to let everybody into that room and into those arguments, right? But it is important when we're trying to help employees, especially company-wide or certain departments, guide through major changes. It's important to highlight not just what the strategy is, but also what it isn't, right? So lay out a couple of the alternative options or ideas or scenarios and let them know why that alternative was less desirable than the one that's playing out. Keep it high level, of course, but I think highlighting these choices and creating transparency around them, it really helps your employees kind of understand the reasoning behind the strategy and also kind of clued into the concept that, it's not like we're just here willy-nilly doing things for fun. We thought through what these consequences are. And we cannot make everybody happy and feel good all the time. And there's certainly going to be consequences and people who are going to get the raw end of the bargain, no matter what, and no matter what the alternative was. So there's that to help. In a kind of brighter side, and not just a brighter side just for the sake of positivity, but really to keep us all on the same page. And if your strategy isn't doing this, then think about it. And I'm talking about linking it to your purpose, to your overall mission, your overall reason for doing what you're doing. Restructuring will help enable us to get to the mission of yada yada. And here's why we believe that. It's really important to consistently provide messaging to yourself, to the decision makers, to the employees that it's affecting, of how it links to your purpose. And if it doesn't link to your purpose, then you need to reconsider. But this bigger picture concept of, yes, there are consequences that are going to be suffered here, but this is the mission and goals of what we're doing, and this is a decision that links exactly to that purpose. Take it a step further too, if you're a manager, I would say to link how this affects the goals that are going on, whether it changes them entirely or whether it's a new set of goals, whatever it is, but why that change is important and how exactly it's going to affect things. Not everything is completely clear and transparent, but you need to address these things. We need to address hey, there's going to be more conversations on exactly how this enables us to X, Y, and Z, or, knowing specifically what it is, this enables us to do X, Y, and Z because of ABC or whatever it is. Whatever it is you have, wherever you're at with the decision, you do have to be pretty clear about that purpose and knowing that this is always going to come back to the higher mission and the really high level goals of the company and sort of where you are in the world and what you're trying to do. Both these things sound kind of obvious, but I think a lot of times people start reacting to everybody's emotions and they try to kind of start managing those things and explaining why people should feel different ways. And I would definitely back off trying to change people's feelings and lean far more into giving context around what the decision making has been. It also helps folks try to start building their own strategic concepts and thinking, essentially. That's how you learn. The only way people are going to learn, and hopefully you're in a position where you want to create more strategic thinkers. Who doesn't? Any business leader would love that outcome as well. So this is a great opportunity to build a bit of a case study around the folks that can handle these kind of conversations and provide them with a bit of transparency. Really helps them think through other decision making at the company and understand there's a lot of moving parts and there's a broader balance that always kind of has to be considered of risk versus reward, consequences versus reward. To that end, I hope you're thinking about, as a leader, how you can involve folks in strategic decision making. And again, not everybody has a place in the room in the final tit for tat arguments. There's so much to know that it's impossible to give employees all the information in the world, but workshops, various initiatives, feedback, right? Understanding that we want to know what you think about this and finding efficient ways to gather that feedback that is actually meaningful. There's probably nothing employees hate more than when your feedback is being asked for and it doesn't matter because nobody is listening and it doesn't go anywhere. It falls on deaf ears and we're filling out surveys just for the sake of filling out surveys. And the way that happens is when you have business leaders who just think they're right all the time, frankly. They just sort of think that, I'm in this business, I know what I'm doing. Thanks for your little opinion, but I got this. To some degree that there's some truth there, but I also think that, doing gathering feedback less as an exercise in kind of checking it off the list and more as a genuine opportunity to consider new data, essentially, right? Consider opinions and things about a situation that you might not see because you're at too high of a level. So if you're in a place where you are rolling out changes like this, thinking about how you're gathering feedback and how you're implementing that feedback is extremely important. It creates not just inclusivity, but it fosters a shared understanding of the context, and especially where strategy is developed, because you say the word strategy and people are like, what does that even mean? But this is what strategy is gathering data and making decisions, weighing the risks and rewards, and making decisions that are intentional and that are part of a larger roadmap. So, I mean, there's so many tools and stuff to do this, AI and different things like this, but so it's not as cumbersome as people might think. But again, rather than just like having this tool for the sake of having the tool, you really got to think about what you're doing with that feedback and who it goes to and how we decide what feedback is the most important. Okay, so all that to say, that is a perspective of, hey, you're in the strategic decision making and you are somebody who has a role in how we communicate to employees in a strategic sense, or how we're really kind of filtering through those strategic discussions and providing good communication to the rest of the team. Now, if you're not, though, then let's think about this. The letter didn't really make it clear if you are or not. Let's say you're a manager and you were really just told this stuff as the same time as the rest of your team. So you don't really know a lot of the insight of why and what and the greater context and everything. So a couple things I think that you can do too, and it's really along the similar path, is saying, asking everybody to take a beat. Let's digest this. Let's wait to see if we get more comms and more information and more data from anyone. Let's all just digest this and then circle back. If it's a groundbreaking situation, definitely schedule a time where the entire goal of the meeting is to gather their feedback and get people's reactions to some of these changes. This isn't always necessary in every little change that happens, but sometimes there are some really disruptive changes in a company, massive layoffs, or something really shaking up within the personnel that are, or an acquisition, something like really major. It's really important to kind of sit down and let everybody. It might be better one-on-one and it might be better in a group setting. You really have to make that judgment call for yourself, but essentially give them a time to process their feelings to you and gather that feedback. And you need to have the professional maturity as the manager to not really be somebody who, again, is sort of changing hearts and minds, but just kind of digesting and helping them get it out of their chest and everything. One thing that you can also do is just go through your own strategic sort of exercise and kind of think about alternatives and scenarios and discuss that with your team that could be happening instead. Always, I think that like your comms from, HQ, call it HQ, will probably always have a purpose-driven message behind it. So again, trying to consistently link that back, but not just link it back to the high-level purpose, but make sure you're really kind of thinking about how these changes are going to bleed through with your daily executionary goals as well. If you are a manager who is managing folks who are individual contributors and executing the work on a daily basis, then you really want to make sure, before you really get into the weeds with these folks, of how it's going to change, if it changes anything at all, or if there's some similarities in what you guys do that you can sort of compare and understand about the scenario, that you can kind of link it all together. So I think that trying to put that all in context for folks is helpful. And if you're just really unclear about all this, like if everything I'm saying is just like, I don't even know how to start or have that conversation, talk to your boss. Talk to your boss. If you're in a more corporate situation, you might need to reach out to the, communications or HR, but ask for help to get coached about not just the talking points here, but ask the questions about the road's not taken, about how it links to your purpose. Ask those tough questions in the context of, hey, we're, helping the team navigate through this, and these are some of the questions that have come up. We'd really like some more transparency around this. I think it will help us all digest this information a little bit better. Thank you so much. That's a really great script and kind of a great question to ask. And I don't think there's any leader in the world who would be miffed by that question. In fact, it's really encouraging to understand that it's like, these folks are concerned about the strategy or want to just understand it, want to learn, and want to grow, because it's definitely a growing opportunity. So, again, if you're somebody who's not necessarily involved in those strategic conversations, you can still play a role, and you can certainly open yourself up to the opportunity, and raise your hand, so to speak, and sort of ask for more insight, ask to be involved, ask to put it into context for yourself and for your team, and you can really go through it together and be honest with your team about how you're all learning together, and set a really great example of professional maturity of how to navigate through asking for more answers and asking for some advocacy for the team. Your team members will appreciate that, and if you handle it in a professionally mature way, all the leaders at your company, again, nobody's going to bat an eye, and in fact, it's going to be really impressive. So thank you all. Appreciate this conversation and this question. I love talking about high-level strategy and how that kind of translates down into the employee experience, because all strategic decisions, again, do have these consequences that are difficult to navigate through. It's difficult as a leader to make those choices, but it's most difficult for folks who it's affecting on an everyday basis. This is very personal stuff. People are feeding their families, paying their mortgages. This is a job that you rely on to supply your life, not just with fun material things, but to literally live, of course. So it's quite personal, and fear and anxiety are a very real thing at work. So I applaud the letter writer for considering what's the best way to not just keep everybody on task, but to make sure that we navigate through this, intact and as a team, and to quell whatever difficult feelings that folks are feeling at the time. It's a really important thing. It's not just silly, touchy-feely stuff. It affects productivity, it affects performance, and it affects really just your experience at work and how you view life sometimes, as big as it is. We spend a lot of time at work, and so it can change your whole mood and your whole attitude. That's another topic, though. So thank you all for joining. Again, Blink Weekly Newsletter 101s with Bianca Lager. I help leaders navigate through tricky career conversations and business moves. We'll see you all next week.